Have you ever looked at your monthly budget and wondered if there was anything you might have missed? Not another investment, not another coupon, not another promise from someone trying to sell you something. I'm talking about benefits and assistance programs that already exist, programs that thousands of older Americans either don't know about or assume they could never qualify for. If you're retired, living on Social Security, or simply trying to make your monthly income stretch a little further, today's video could help point you toward resources that are worth looking into. Stay with me until the end because we're going to talk about 3 different types of programs that many seniors overlook. Depending on your circumstances, one or more of them may be worth exploring. We'll keep everything simple. No confusing government language, no complicated legal terms, just plain English. More importantly, we're also going to talk about one of the biggest mistakes people make when they decide they don't qualify without ever checking. That mistake alone causes many people to walk away from assistance they might actually be eligible to receive. Now, before we begin, there's something important I want to say. Every benefit we discuss today has its own eligibility rules. Some programs are administered by the federal government, others are run by individual states. Income limits, resource limits, and available funding can change from year to year, and in some cases even vary depending on where you live. So think of today's video as a roadmap, not a guarantee. The goal is simple, to help you discover programs that may be worth asking about. Because asking questions costs nothing. Missing out could cost much more. I've spent years helping families understand financial decisions during retirement, and I've noticed something interesting. Most people don't lose money because they make terrible decisions. They lose money because they never realized certain opportunities existed in the first place. They assume someone will tell them. Someone never does. Government agencies generally don't call people to announce every program they might qualify for. Instead, many benefits require an application. If you never apply, no one automatically signs you up. That's why so many seniors continue paying expenses they may have been able to reduce. Today, let's change that. Let's start with something that affects millions of Medicare beneficiaries every single month. If you're enrolled in Medicare, you've probably noticed that healthcare costs don't stop after retirement. Premiums, doctor visits, prescription costs, even small co-payments can add up over the course of a year. What many people don't realize is that some states participate in programs designed to help certain Medicare beneficiaries with these costs. Depending on eligibility, these programs may help pay Medicare premiums, and in some situations may also help with other Medicare-related expenses. The exact rules depend on where you live and your financial situation. That's why it's worth checking, even if you've assumed in the past that your income was too high. Many people hear the words assistance program and immediately think, that's probably not for me. But eligibility isn't based on guesswork. It's based on the program's rules. Sometimes those rules change. Sometimes your financial situation changes. And sometimes people discover they qualify after believing for years that they didn't. Imagine someone named Margaret. She's retired. She budgets carefully every month. She pays her bills on time. She rarely asks anyone for help because she's always believed someone else probably needs it more. One afternoon, while talking with a local benefits counselor, she learns there may be a Medicare assistance program available in her state. She fills out an application, not expecting much. A few weeks later, she discovers she qualifies for assistance with certain Medicare expenses, not because anything in her life suddenly changed, but because she finally asked the question. That's a lesson worth remembering. You don't have to know every program by name. You don't have to understand every regulation. You simply need to find out whether your circumstances meet today's requirements. One of the safest places to begin is your State Health Insurance Assistance Program, often called SHIP. SHIP counselors provide free, unbiased guidance about Medicare and related assistance programs. They don't sell insurance. They don't charge application fees. Their job is simply to help people understand their options. If you decide to contact them, the conversation can be surprisingly simple. You might say, I'm enrolled in Medicare, and I'd like to learn whether there are any assistance programs I should know about. That's enough to start the conversation. And before we move on, I want to leave you with one important warning. Whenever people hear about government benefits, scammers aren't far behind. Be cautious of unexpected phone calls claiming they can unlock benefits immediately. If you provide your bank account, Medicare number, or Social Security number, government agencies generally don't make unsolicited calls asking for sensitive financial information in order to release benefits. If you're ever unsure, end the call and contact the official agency yourself using a verified phone number or website. It's one of the simplest ways to protect both your identity and your retirement savings. Now that we've covered healthcare assistance, let's move to another area where many retirees feel the pressure every single season of the year: their household energy bills. For many retirees, the biggest surprise isn't what they spend on groceries. It isn't even healthcare. It's what happens when the weather changes. The first cold spell arrives, or a summer heat wave settles in. Suddenly, the monthly utility bill jumps far higher than expected, and unlike many other expenses, heating and cooling aren't optional. They're essential. For older adults, maintaining a safe indoor temperature isn't just about comfort, it can be an important part of protecting your health. That's why many people are surprised to learn that there are energy assistance programs designed to help qualifying households with utility costs. Depending on where you live, your household income, and the funding available in your area, these programs may provide assistance with heating costs, cooling costs, or in some situations, emergency energy needs. The amount of assistance and who qualifies can vary. That's why it's important not to assume you're ineligible simply because you own your home or receive Social Security. Many retirees make that assumption without ever asking. Let's imagine another example. David and Linda have been married for over 40 years. They've paid off most of their home. They're careful with money. Every winter they turn the thermostat down a little lower than they'd like because they're worried about the next utility bill. They've heard people talk about energy assistance before, but they've always believed those programs were intended for someone else. Then a neighbor encourages them to contact their local assistance office. They ask a few questions, complete a simple application, and discover there may be help available based on their current circumstances. Whether or not someone qualifies depends entirely on the program's rules, not on assumptions. That's why checking is so important. Another point worth knowing is that some energy assistance programs may also have provisions for households facing an energy emergency, such as a utility shutoff notice or the loss of heating or cooling equipment. Exactly what assistance is available depends on local program rules and available funding. If you think your household might benefit, don't wait until the situation becomes urgent. Information is often easier to gather before there's an emergency. A good place to start is your state's Energy Assistance Office or your local community services agency. In many parts of the country, calling 211 can also connect you with local organizations that can explain what programs are available in your area and where to apply. These services are generally provided free of charge. One more word of caution. Never pay someone who promises they can guarantee government assistance or move your application to the front of the line. Legitimate public assistance programs do not require paying a private company simply to submit an application. If someone pressures you to send money, purchase a gift card, or provide sensitive financial information before you've even spoken with an official agency, treat it as a warning sign. Take your time, verify who you're dealing with, and whenever possible, contact the official office directly using a trusted phone number or website. Sometimes the best financial decision isn't finding new income, it's reducing the bills you already have. For many retirees, lowering a recurring monthly expense can make just as much difference as increasing monthly income. And that brings us to the third opportunity, one that often causes the most confusion of all. Many people hear about it, assume it doesn't apply to them, and never ask another question. Let's clear up that misunderstanding next. Now let's talk about the third opportunity. This is probably the one that creates the most confusion. Not because it's hidden, but because so many people misunderstand what it actually is. Ask a room full of retirees whether someone can receive more than one type of federal benefit, and you'll hear every answer imaginable. Some people will confidently say no. Others will say only if you're disabled. A few will simply shrug and admit they've never looked into it. The truth is more complicated than a simple yes or no. Different federal programs serve different purposes. For example, retirement benefits through Social Security are generally based on a person's work history and earnings over their lifetime. Other programs are designed to provide additional financial assistance for people who meet specific income and resource requirements. That distinction matters because receiving one benefit does not automatically mean you're ineligible for every other program. Eligibility depends on the rules of each individual program. That's why making assumptions can become expensive. Let's look at another example. Meet Robert. He worked for nearly 4 decades before retiring. He isn't wealthy. He isn't struggling every day either. But by the end of each month, things become a little tighter. After paying for groceries, utilities, insurance, and prescription medications, there's very little left. For years, Robert believed there was nothing else available. I already receive Social Security, he would tell friends, so that's all I'm entitled to. He never questioned that belief, until one afternoon, During a conversation at his local senior center, someone encouraged him to schedule an appointment with the Social Security Administration to review his situation, not because anyone knew he qualified, but because nobody knew he didn't. That single appointment answered questions Robert had carried around for years. Whether he qualified wasn't determined by rumors, or by what his neighbor thought, or by something he had heard 5 years earlier. It was determined by the current rules applied to his own circumstances. That's an important lesson for all of us. Government programs change. Income thresholds may change. Program guidance can change. And your own financial situation can change over time as well. A decision that was correct several years ago may not reflect today's reality. That's why financial counselors often recommend reviewing your eligibility whenever your circumstances change, or if it's been several years since you last checked. If you believe you might qualify for additional assistance, the safest approach is to contact the Social Security Administration directly or speak with a qualified benefits counselor. They can explain which programs exist, what information you'll need, and whether it makes sense to submit an application. Just as importantly, they'll explain if you do not qualify. Either way, you'll have an answer based on facts instead of assumptions. One more thing deserves attention. Many older Americans avoid asking questions because they worry they'll be judged. They've spent their entire lives working hard, paying taxes, supporting their families. The idea of asking whether assistance is available can feel uncomfortable. But remember this, there's nothing wrong with understanding the programs that already exist. Learning about your options doesn't obligate you to apply. Submitting an application doesn't guarantee approval, and being approved simply means you've met the requirements established under that program. It's about making informed decisions, not asking for special treatment. As we move toward the end of today's discussion, we're going to bring all three opportunities together and talk about the single habit that separates people who discover available resources from those who unknowingly leave them behind year after year. Part 4. The habit that makes the biggest difference. If there's one message I hope stays with you after today's video, it's this. The biggest financial mistake many retirees make isn't spending too much. It isn't investing too little. And it isn't necessarily claiming benefits too early or too late. It's assuming they already know every resource that's available to them. That assumption can quietly cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars over the course of retirement. Let's think about how quickly life can change. Maybe your household income is lower than it was a few years ago. Perhaps your spouse recently retired. Maybe you've experienced unexpected medical expenses, or you've moved to a different state. Even small changes like these can affect which programs may be worth exploring. That's why financial experts often encourage retirees to review their benefits periodically, instead of assuming yesterday's answer will always be today's answer. Here's another example. Susan is 74 years old. She has always been organized. She keeps every receipt, balances her checkbook, pays every bill before it's due. She also believed there was no reason to review her retirement benefits because nothing has changed. Then her daughter convinced her to sit down one Saturday morning and spend an hour reviewing available resources. Not because they expected to uncover a hidden fortune, simply because they wanted peace of mind. By the end of that afternoon, Susan had a checklist of agencies to contact, questions to ask, and programs to learn more about. Some weren't a good fit. Others provided useful information she had never heard before. Most importantly, she stopped wondering whether she might be missing something. She finally knew, and sometimes certainty is just as valuable as the benefit itself. So how do you begin? It doesn't require complicated financial software. It doesn't require hiring an expensive consultant. Start with a simple checklist. Review your Medicare coverage. Ask whether there are state or local programs that help eligible residents with healthcare costs. Look into community energy assistance resources if rising utility bills have become a burden. If your financial circumstances have changed, consider contacting the Social Security Administration or a qualified benefits counselor to ask whether there are programs you should review. You don't need to become an expert overnight. You only need to know where to ask. And while you're doing that, remember one more important rule. Protect your personal information. Scammers often target older adults by creating a false sense of urgency. They may claim your benefits are about to expire. They may say you've been pre-approved. Or they might insist you must verify your banking information immediately. Take a moment to pause. Legitimate government agencies generally do not pressure people into making immediate financial decisions over an unexpected phone call. If something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts, hang up, locate the official phone number yourself, and make the call on your own terms. That single step can protect both your finances and your identity. By now, we've talked about 3 different areas that may deserve a closer look: healthcare assistance, energy assistance, and income support programs for people who meet specific eligibility requirements. The details are different, the qualifications are different, but they all share one thing in common. You won't know whether they apply to you until you ask. And that leads us to the final part of today's video. Because before we finish, I want to leave you with one practical action plan you can follow this week, one that takes less than an hour but could help you feel far more confident about your retirement finances going forward. So let's bring everything together. Today we didn't talk about secret government programs, we didn't talk about loopholes, and we certainly didn't talk about free money. What we discussed were three categories of assistance that many older Americans either overlook or assume they could never qualify for: healthcare assistance programs, energy assistance programs, and income support programs that may be available to people who meet specific eligibility requirements. The important thing to remember is this: no YouTube video, not even this one, can tell you whether you personally qualify. Only the official agencies administering these programs can review your individual circumstances and provide that answer. But here's what this video can do. It can encourage you to ask the question, because asking costs nothing. And if the answer turns out to be no, at least you'll know. You won't spend another year wondering whether you missed an opportunity. If the answer is yes, then you've taken an important step toward making your retirement a little more secure. Here's a simple action plan you can follow this week. First, make a short list of your current monthly expenses. Look at your healthcare costs, your utility bills, your housing expenses, and any other recurring payments that put pressure on your budget. Next, identify which of today's topics might apply to your situation. If you receive Medicare, consider contacting your state health insurance assistance program, commonly known as SHIP, or another official Medicare counseling resource available in your state to learn about your options. If rising heating or cooling bills have become a challenge, check with your state's Energy Assistance Office or another official local resource to see what programs are currently available. If your income has changed or you've never reviewed your eligibility for other federal assistance programs, consider contacting the Social Security Administration or speaking with a qualified benefits counselor for guidance. Write down your questions before you call. Take notes during the conversation. And don't be afraid to ask someone to explain something a second time if it isn't clear. That's exactly what these services are there for. One final reminder: protect yourself from scams. Never assume that an unexpected phone call, text message, or email is legitimate simply because it mentions Medicare, Social Security, or government benefits. Before sharing personal information, verify who you're communicating with by using official contact information from a trusted source. A few extra minutes of caution can save months or even years of frustration. If today's video has been helpful, I have one small favor to ask. Think about a friend, neighbor, sibling, or family member who's also navigating retirement. Maybe they're living on a fixed income. Maybe they've mentioned rising healthcare costs. Or maybe they've simply wondered whether there are resources they haven't explored. Share this video with them, not because it guarantees they'll qualify for anything, but because it may encourage them to ask the questions they haven't asked yet. Sometimes the most valuable piece of financial advice isn't a complicated investment strategy. It's simply knowing where to look for reliable information. Thank you for spending these minutes with me today. I truly appreciate your time and your trust. If you enjoy straightforward, easy-to-understand discussions about retirement, Medicare, Social Security, and practical ways to stay informed, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss future videos. Until next time, take care of yourself, stay informed, and remember, the best financial decisions begin with good information, not assumptions.